Good morning, students. Today we will discuss about what is statistics, then data. So what is data? What is the classification of data? Then collection of data, classification of data, and also the tabulation of data. So this is what we can discuss in this class. So the first one is data. So data means it is a collection of information. So it is already you know very well the meaning of the data. So in general, we can classify the data into two types. The first one is primary data and the another one is secondary data, right? So the primary data means it is new data or original data. Similarly, the secondary data means it is already collected data or old data. So this is what you have to know the meaning of the primary data and the secondary data. So next we have some classification of the data. Yes, so this is the categories of the data. So here we have two types of data. The first one is primary data and another one is secondary data. So the primary data is nothing but the primary data is the one which is collected by the investigator himself for the purpose of specific inquiry or study. Such data is original in character and is generated by the survey conducted by the individuals or research institutions or any organization. So in the similar way, we can define secondary data. Here we can give an example for the primary data. So the secondary data means it is already collected data or old data. So how to collect the primary data? So here we have 5 methods to collect the primary data. The first one is a direct personal interviews. The second one is indirect oral interviews. The third method is information from correspondence. The fourth one is mailed questionnaire method. The last one is schedules sent through enumerators. The direct personal interviews is nothing but the persons from whom informations are collected are known as informants. The investigator personally meets them and asks questions to gather the information or necessary informations. It is the suitable method for intensive rather than the extensive field study or field survey. It suits best for intensive study of the limited fields. So this is a direct personal interviews. So the second method is indirect oral interview. So in this method, the investigator contacts witness or neighbors or friends or some other third parties who are capable for supplying the necessary information. So this is indirect oral interview. So the next method is information through or information from correspondence. The investigator appoints local agents or correspondents in different places and compiles the information sent by them. Informations to newspapers and some departments of governments come by this method. So the advantages of this method is that it is cheap and appropriate for extensive investigation, but it may not ensure accurate results because the correspondence are likely to be negligence, prejudiced, and biased. So this is the information from correspondence. So the next one is mailed questionnaire method. Under this method, a list of questions is prepared and is sent to all the informants by post. The list of questions is technically called questionnaire. A covering letter accompanying the questionnaire explains the purpose of the investigation and the importance of the correct information and request the informants to fill in the blank spaces provided and to return the form within a specified time. So this method is appropriate to those cases where the informations are literate and are spread over a wide area. The last method is schedule sent through enumerators. Under this method, the enumerators are interviews, take the schedules, meet the informants, and filled the replies, filing the replies. Often distinction is made between the schedule and a questionnaire. A schedule is filled by the interviews in a face-to-face situation with a informant. A questionnaire is filled by the informant with he receives and returned by post. So it is suitable for the extensive survey. So the next one is secondary data. Yes, already we are discussed. So what is the secondary data? So secondary data is nothing but the data which have been already collected and analyzed by some earlier agency for its own use, and later the data are used by the different agency, right? So according to the Wagner, a primary source is a publication in which the data are collected or published by the same authority which gathered and analyzed them. A secondary source is a publication reporting the data which have been gathered by the other authorities and for which others are responsible. So this is the secondary data. So how to collect the secondary data? Means here we have two possibilities to collect the secondary source. That means sources of the secondary data. The first one is published sources and another one is unpublished sources. So from the published sources, we can collect the secondary data. The various sources of the published data are clinical and other personal records, death certificates, published mortality statistics, census, publication, etc. Example include official publications of Central Statistical Authority, publication of Ministry of Health and other ministries, newspapers and journals, international publication like publication by World Health Organizations, World Bank, UNICEF, then records of hospitals or any health institutions, etc. So these are the published sources. So from these sources, here we can collect the secondary data, right? So the next one is unpublished sources. All the statistical materials is not always published. There are various sources of unpublished data, such as records maintained by various government and private offices, studies made by the research institutions, scholars, etc. Such sources can also be used where necessary. So, precautions in the use of secondary data. The following are some of the points that are to be considered in the use of secondary data. The first one is how the data has been collected and processed. The second one is the accuracy of the data. The third one is how far the data has been summarized. The fourth one is how comparable the data is with other tabulations. Then last one is how to interpret the data, especially when figures collected for one purpose is useful for another. So these are the precautions in the use of secondary data. So next one is classification. Yes, already we are done for the collection of data. So next case is how to classify the data. Classification. So to classify the data, we have some objects. The following main objectives of the classification of data. The first one is it condenses the mass of data in an easily assimilable form. It eliminates unnecessary details. It facilitates comparisons and highlights the significant aspects of data. It enables one to get a mental picture of the information and helps in drawing inferences. It helps the statistical treatment of the information collected. Yes, these are the objects of classification. So next we have some types of the classification. So here we have 4 types of classification, like a chronological classification, geographical classification, qualitative classification, and quantitative classification. So the chronological classification is nothing but the chronological classification, the data collected or data are arranged according to the order of time expressed in years or months or weeks, etc. The data is generally classified in ascending order of the time. For example, here you can take, here we have some years 1970, 71, 72, 73 up to 76 and the corresponding birth rate. So based on the time period, here we have to classify the data, right? That is chronological classification. Chronological. So it is based on the time period. So that is the meaning of the chronological classification. So the next one is geographical classification. So the geographical classification is nothing but based on the geographical region, we have to classify the data. For example, the production of the paddy in different states in Iraq, the production of wheat in different countries. Here you can represent the countries, especially here America, China, Denmark, France, Iraq, and the corresponding yield of wheat in kilogram per acre, 1925, 893 up to 862. So based on the geographical location, we have to classify the data. So this is what the meaning of the geographical classification. So the next one is qualitative classification. So the qualitative classification is nothing but we have to classify the data based on the quality. Quality, it is not quantity. right? So in this type of classification, the data classified on the basis of some attributes or quality like sex, literacy, religion, employment, etc. Such attributes cannot be measured along with a scale. Here we can give any example for the qualitative classification. A simple classification may be shown as population, especially here we can give the male and female, simple classification. And also here male and female, male single or married. So female means single married. So these are the examples. So next quantitative classification. Quantitative classification refers to the classification of data according to some characteristics that can be measured such as height, weight, etc. For example, the group of children may be classified according to the weight as given below. Yes, here we have some weights and the corresponding number of children. So in general, the quantitative classification is nothing but we have to classify the data based on the quantity. That's all, right? So the last one is tabulation of the data. So already we know that data collection or collection of data. In the next stage, we have to classify the data. Finally, we can go for our tabulation. So the tabulation is the process of summarizing classified or grouped data in the form of a table so that it is easily understood and an investigator is quickly able to locate the desired information, right? So here we can give some example for the tabulation. So this is what here you have to represent the table number, then table name, then body of the table. So stubs and the captions. Finally, here you have to represent the footnotes. Yes. So I think this is enough. Thank you.